AITA for excluding my SIL from family gatherings because she has kids. Because of this, she wouldn't even let my brother come without her. I never thought this would become such a point of contention in my family, but here we are. I need some outside perspective because, at this point, I feel like I am either losing my mind or dealing with people who refuse to accept reality. For context, I am 28 years old, and I have always known that I do not want kids. Ever. It is not a phase, it is not something I will grow out of, and it is definitely not because I haven't met the right person yet, as some people like to say. I just genuinely do not enjoy being around children. I do not like the noise, the mess, the unpredictability, or the responsibility that comes with them. I like my peace, my space, and my adult-focused life. My brother Jake is 4 years older than me, and he is married to Amanda, who is 31. They have 2 kids, a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I love my brother, and I do not have anything against their kids personally, but I do not enjoy being around them for extended periods. I tolerate it at family events when I have to, but I do not go out of my way to spend time with them, and I certainly do not invite them into my home. I have always enjoyed hosting. I love having people over, cooking, setting up a cozy atmosphere, and planning fun activities. Most of my family gatherings take place at my house because, frankly, I am the best at it. I put effort into making sure everything is enjoyable, and everyone has a good time. But there is one rule that I have always been very clear about: these events are for adults only. No kids. It is not a new rule. It is not something I suddenly imposed after Jake and Amanda had children. I have been consistent about it for years. I do not even invite my friends who have kids because I do not want to deal with children in my home. It is not personal, it is just the way I like to host. My events often include drinking, board games that involve strategy and themes that are not child-friendly, and conversations that do not need to be censored. It is a relaxed, fun environment where adults can unwind without worrying about little ones running around. Most of my family understands and respects this. My parents, my other siblings, our cousins, everyone knows the rule and accepts it without argument. If they have kids and cannot find a babysitter, they simply do not come. It has never been a big deal. Enter Amanda. Amanda has always had an issue with my stance on children, but it did not become a major problem until she had kids of her own. Before that, she would occasionally make snide remarks about how I would change my mind, or how it was sad that I did not want to be around children, but I ignored it. However, once she became a mother, it was like my rules suddenly became a personal attack against her. She has accused me of being a kid hater, which is ridiculous. Just because I do not enjoy being around children does not mean I hate them. She has called me selfish for not making an exception for her kids, as if my house should accommodate her choices. She has even tried to guilt-trip me by saying that I am excluding my own niece and nephew from family events. I have explained my reasoning to her more times than I can count. It is not about her. It is not about her kids. It is about the fact that I have a rule in place, and I am not going to start making exceptions because the moment I do, everyone else with kids will expect the same. If I allow her kids, then my cousins with toddlers will ask why they cannot bring theirs. If I let one person break the rule loses all meaning. Jake has tried to stay neutral, but his version of mediating is basically just telling me to let it go and be the bigger person. He says things like, "You know how Amanda is," as if that should be a valid reason for me to change my boundaries. He tells me that it would mean a lot to Amanda if I made an exception, but he never actually says that he cares about it himself. It is always about keeping the peace with his wife. My parents have backed me up completely. They have told Amanda that it is my house and my rules, and if she does not want to attend without her kids, that is her choice. They have also pointed out that there are plenty of family events where kids are welcome, holidays, birthdays, random gatherings at their house, but my events are different, and that is okay. Despite this, Amanda continues to act like I am personally attacking her. She has even started skipping family events entirely, including ones that do allow kids, because she says she does not want to be around people who discriminate against mothers. She has told Jake that he should stop coming to my gatherings in solidarity, but thankfully, he has not gone that far. However, I can tell he is exhausted by the whole situation and just wants me to give in to make things easier. I refuse. I am not going to let someone guilt-trip me into changing a boundary that I have always had just because they do not like it. I am not banning Amanda from my events. I am not banning Jake. I am not banning their kids from every family gathering, just the ones that I personally host. So, am I the bad guy for holding my ground on this? Or is Amanda being unreasonable by expecting me to change my rules for her? Update 1. Well, that blew up. I wasn't expecting so many responses, and honestly, some of them made me rethink things. I had gone into this whole situation convinced that I was completely in the right. After all, it's my house, my rules. I wasn't banning Amanda, I wasn't banning Jake, I wasn't even banning their kids from all family events. I just wanted to keep my own gatherings adult only, something I had been consistent about from the very beginning. But after reading through a flood of different perspectives, I realized that, at the very least, I should reconsider whether there was a way to soften my stance without feeling like I was compromising something that mattered to me. I never wanted this to become such a big deal. I never set out to create some grand divide in my family. I wasn't trying to make a statement or push anyone away. I was just trying to maintain the kind of social environment that I enjoy in my own home, one where I don't have to filter conversations, watch out for tiny fingers grabbing my stuff, or deal with the stress that comes with hosting kids. But at the same time, I started wondering if I was being a little too rigid. Was it really that impossible to find some kind of middle ground? Could I make some kind of small concession without it turning into an open invitation for every toddler in the family to take over my living room? So, I sat down with Jake to try and figure out if there was a way to move forward. If this was really about family and inclusion, then there had to be a way to compromise in a way that felt fair. I told him I'd be willing to host one family gathering a year that included kids, something like a big summer barbecue. Something outside, where the chaos of children wouldn't be contained within my walls, where they could run around and entertain themselves while the adults could still relax and enjoy each other's company. That way, Amanda and the kids could be included in at least one of my hosted events, but it wouldn't become a constant thing where I had to dread every invitation I sent out. Jake's reaction was unexpected. I had assumed he would just nod and say thanks, maybe acknowledge that it was a decent compromise, but instead, he looked like I had just thrown him a life raft in the middle of a storm. He actually let out this small sigh, like he had been holding his breath. His shoulders dropped. He looked relieved. And that was my first red flag. I hadn't expected this to be such a huge weight off his shoulders. I had figured this was just another one of those minor annoyances married couples deal with, something Amanda grumbled about but would eventually get over. But the way Jake reacted made it clear that this had been a much bigger issue for him than I had realized. I asked him what was going on. He hesitated at first, tried to brush it off, but I pushed. I told him straight up that he looked like someone had just lifted a ton of bricks off his back, and I wanted to know why. That's when he finally admitted it. Amanda had been pressuring him to cut contact with me over this. That hit me like a slap in the face. I knew she was upset. I knew she didn't like my rule. I knew she had been making snide comments and complaining about it to Jake. But I hadn't realized she was actively trying to sever our relationship. That was a whole different level of hostility. And the worst part? The way Jake said it, the way he avoided my eyes when he admitted it, made it painfully obvious that this wasn't something she had just thrown out in the heat of the moment. This was something she had been pushing for. Repeatedly. Jake told me he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to cut me off. He said he missed coming to my events, that he actually enjoyed them, that he looked forward to them. But the way he said it made it clear that this had become a serious point of conflict in their marriage. This wasn't just about a disagreement over parenting styles. This wasn't just Amanda feeling slighted that her kids weren't invited. This was something deeper, something more controlling, something that made my stomach twist. I felt guilty. Not because I thought I had done something wrong, but because I hadn't realized how bad this had gotten for Jake. I had been treating this whole thing like a frustrating family dispute, like one of those annoying things people argue about at holiday dinners but eventually laugh off. But it wasn't that. It wasn't about kids at my house anymore. It had turned into a battle of control between Amanda and Jake, and somehow, I was at the center of it. I told Jake I'd let Amanda know about the compromise myself, that I wanted to talk to her directly and try to smooth things over. If she was this upset, then maybe hearing it from me, instead of through Jake, would help. Maybe if I explained that I wasn't trying to exclude her, just trying to maintain a space that felt comfortable for me, she would back off. That's when Jake got really uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, ran a hand through his hair, and mumbled something about how that wasn't a good idea. That was my second red flag. I asked him why, and he just shrugged, eyes darting away like he was hoping I wouldn't press the issue. I pushed. I wasn't about to let that slide. And then, finally, he admitted it. Amanda didn't want to come without the kids anyway, but she also didn't want him coming to my gatherings without her. That was the moment everything clicked into place. This wasn't about the kids. This was never about the kids. Amanda wasn't upset that my events were child-free. She wasn't upset that her kids were being excluded. She was upset that she wasn't in control. Because if she really cared about being included in family events, she could have just come without the kids, like my other family members do. She could have accepted that this was just how I chose to host and either adjusted or chosen not to attend without making it into a family-wide issue. But she didn't want that. She didn't want to come without the kids. And she didn't want Jake going either. She was using this whole thing as an excuse to isolate him from me and the rest of the family. I sat there, staring at my brother, feeling this slow, creeping realization settle over me. This wasn't about an argument over my hosting preferences. This was about Amanda trying to cut Jake off from the people who cared about him. And the worst part? It was working. Jake looked exhausted. Worn down. Like he had been fighting this battle for way longer than I had been aware of. And that scared me. Because it meant this wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about some petty grudge. This was about Amanda actively working to pull Jake away from his family, to make sure he was dependent on her, to make sure he didn't have anywhere to turn if things got worse. And that was a whole other level of concerning. Update 2. Okay, this just keeps getting worse. I thought I had a handle on the situation, that I understood where things stood, but I was wrong. So wrong. I had braced myself for resistance, for maybe an icy reception or another passive-aggressive comment, but what I got was something else entirely. I decided to go straight to Amanda and tell her about the kid-friendly compromise. I figured that if I approached her directly, explained my reasoning without Jake as the middleman, then maybe, just maybe, she would see that I wasn't trying to exclude her, that I wasn't targeting her children, that I was actually making an effort to include them in a way that worked for everyone. That was my mistake. Assuming she actually wanted a compromise. The moment I brought it up, she lost it on me. And I don't mean she was upset, or frustrated, or even annoyed. I mean she completely lost it. Screaming, furious, face red with anger kind of lost it. She didn't just reject the compromise, she went straight for my throat. She called me manipulative. She accused me of trying to steal Jake from her. She said I had always been out to ruin her marriage, that I had never respected their relationship, that I was some toxic influence who couldn't stand the fact that Jake had a life outside of me. I was completely blindsided. I mean, I knew she didn't like me much. That part was never exactly a secret. I knew she resented my rules, my choices, my preference for child-free spaces. But stealing my own brother? The idea was so ridiculous, so out of left field, that for a second, I genuinely didn't know how to respond. She wasn't just mad. She was furious in a way that felt deeply personal, like this wasn't even about the kid issue anymore. She went on this whole rant about how I had always been Jake's favorite. How I had always come first, how he always took my side. She said it like it was some massive betrayal, like siblings having a close bond was some kind of crime. She twisted it into something toxic, something unnatural, like our relationship wasn't just a normal sibling dynamic but some sort of inappropriate emotional connection that had been threatening her marriage since the beginning. It was unsettling. The level of resentment in her voice, the way she spat the words out like they had been festering inside her for years, it was so much deeper than I had realized. I tried to push back. I told her she was being ridiculous, that I barely even see Jake outside of family gatherings, that this wasn't about me trying to pull him away from her. I told her that this wasn't me isolating him, it was her. She was the one demanding he cut off his own sister over something that had nothing to do with their marriage. She was the one trying to dictate who he was allowed to spend time with, and now that I was offering a compromise, she was still furious, still making it into a personal attack. But she wasn't having it. She had already decided I was the villain in this story, and nothing I said was going to change that. She told me she was done trying. That if Jake wanted to be part of my child-free cult, then she wasn't going to stop him. She said it with so much venom, so much disgust, as if my decision not to have children was some radical, extremist ideology instead of just a personal lifestyle choice. She made it clear that this wasn't about family or fairness or finding a way to coexist. It was about control. It was about punishing Jake for maintaining a bond with someone she didn't approve of. I left after that. There was no point in continuing the conversation. She wasn't interested in talking, she was interested in attacking. So I went to Jake and told him everything that had just happened. I told him what she said, how she reacted, how she twisted everything into some bizarre narrative about me trying to steal him away from her. And Jake just deflated. I had expected him to be shocked, or at least upset, but he wasn't. He just looked exhausted. Like this was something he had heard before. Like this wasn't a revelation to him at all. And that was when he admitted it. Amanda had always been jealous of our sibling relationship. Since the very beginning. She had always resented how close we were, had always found ways to make him feel guilty for spending time with me. It wasn't just about my no kids rule. It wasn't about my hosting preferences. It was about Amanda making sure that he didn't have anyone in his life who she couldn't control. I asked him why he put up with it, why he let her get away with it, why he had spent years allowing her to push him further and further away from his own family. He just shrugged, eyes dull, shoulders slumped in defeat. And then he said the words that made my stomach sink, "It's easier than fighting." Update 3. After my last update, things took a turn I didn't expect. I thought the situation had reached its peak, that Amanda had made her position clear, and that Jake had resigned himself to a life of quiet submission. I figured this was just how things were going to be, me on the outside looking in, watching my brother slowly fade away into the version of himself that Amanda wanted him to be. But I was wrong. Something shifted. Maybe it was the conversation we had, maybe it was just years of built-up exhaustion, but after I confronted him about Amanda's behavior, Jake started opening up more. And what he told me made my stomach turn. It wasn't just me. Amanda wasn't just trying to control his relationship with his family, she was trying to control every single aspect of his life. She monitored his phone. She had full access to all of his social media accounts, including his messages, his emails, even his location tracking. She expected him to check in every time he left the house without her, and if he didn't, she would blow up his phone until he answered. If he took too long, she would start calling other people, demanding to know where he was, as if he was some wayward teenager instead of a grown man in his 30s. I asked him if he thought this was normal. He just shrugged. He had been living this way for so long that he didn't even notice how limited he had become. He said it was just easier to keep the peace, to do what she wanted, because the alternative was worse. But he admitted that, for the first time in a long time, he had started to wonder. He had started to see just how small his world had become. And then, something happened that changed everything. In the last few weeks, Jake started coming to family gatherings without Amanda. Not all of them, but enough that it became noticeable. He showed up to a Sunday dinner at our parents' house. He came to a cousin's birthday party. He even stopped by my place one night for a drink, just the two of us, like we used to do before Amanda made it impossible. And, as you can imagine, she was furious. She called him constantly. If he didn't answer, the texts started rolling in, paragraphs of guilt-tripping, accusations, demands. If that didn't work, she started calling my parents, demanding to know why they were stealing her husband from her. She claimed they were trying to turn him against her, that they were being disrespectful of their marriage by encouraging him to spend time away from her. When they pushed back and told her he was just visiting his own family, she lashed out. She told them they were selfish, that they had no right to expect time with him, that he was hers, that he belonged with her, not them. That was when my mom realized what was really going on. Amanda called her one night in a full-blown meltdown, sobbing that Jake had become cold and distant. That he wasn't talking to her as much, that he wasn't telling her everything he was doing. My mom, trying to be reasonable, asked her why she was so upset about him spending time with his family. And Amanda snapped. She said, because he should be with me, not you. And that was it. That was the moment it all clicked into place. It was never about the kids. It was never about me not accepting her. It was never about my child-free cult or my so-called exclusionary events. This had never been about anything other than Amanda's obsession with keeping Jake under her control. She didn't want him to have relationships outside of her. She didn't want him to have support systems, lifelines, or a world that existed outside of her influence. Jake saw it, too. He started thinking about his life in a way he hadn't before. He admitted that, for years, he had been walking on eggshells, trying to avoid fights, trying to keep Amanda happy at the expense of his own happiness. He had let himself become isolated without even realizing it. And now, for the first time, he was questioning it. He was wondering what his life would look like if he took back some control, if he stopped letting Amanda dictate everything he did. He started saying he wanted more independence, that he wanted to make his own choices, to live his life the way he wanted to, not the way he was told to. As for Amanda, she keeps blaming me for all of her problems. She has convinced herself that I am the villain, that I single-handedly ruined her marriage by refusing to cater to her demands. But honestly, if my principle of no kids at gatherings was enough to unravel all of this, then it was doomed anyway.